Sure. So Title I is one that's been talked about a lot, and it's interesting because it's when it comes down to budget, it's not a huge part of the budget. Title I's pretty small, but it's something that I think has resonated with a lot of people. Basically, there's a federal designation where you have to have 40% of your student population qualify under the free and reduced meals plan, and then you qualify as Title I. So Mountain Trails had qualified as Title I a long time ago, and then as new developments came in, it really kind of offset the percentages, and they lost it. Mountain Trails has once again qualified as a Title I school. There was a dynamic this past year where there are essentially 4 different state grants we can apply for that contribute about $8 million to our budget to get funding to those Title I schools that have qualified. We found out that 3 of the 4 grants we would no longer be able to apply for. There was a whole thing with a survey and a census that got taken that I'm not going to delve into. Anyways, so it significantly cut our we lost essentially about $5.5 million in funding overnight. And so the question was, what do we do moving forward? We basically buffered that with about 3.5 million that we subsidized from our general budget to prop up Title I for this year. But then essentially the floor, which is you have to qualify for 40%, got raised. And so the 3 schools that qualified to be added on to Title I this year, including Mountain Trails, did not receive funding. Now they do qualify for a couple of other things. I think if you're a Mountain Trails parent, you may be aware of they've got the free fruit program where the kids try new fruits and veggies. They've got some supports from the Boys and Girls Club after school and some things like that because they have qualified as Title I, but they do not currently have any of the funding or any of the district supports that we provide to Title I schools. So that's one example. Another example I can give that's kind of a fast one is just when we looked at things like assigning assistant principals. So previously, if you have 750 kids, there's been a process where we have kind of a scaling model, and you essentially get an assistant principal in an elementary school at that point. There was a proposal brought forward to drop that number to 500, meaning that like if you have 500 students, you get an assistant principal. I was supportive of that, and I said, yeah, I think that we're seeing an increase in behaviors. When we pull principals out of buildings for meetings, it means that secretaries are essentially running the schools, and that's not really fair to them. I am supportive of putting an additional assistant principal in the schools at the 500 instead of 750. But at the same time, that means that when we go up to 1,000 kids in a school, they should get a second AP because we're essentially saying 500 is now the marker. That was not supported. So we have schools that we are adding on assistant principals and things on one end, but not on the other. And I said, well, at least drop it and say, okay, if you qualify at 600, then you qualify at 1,100 or whatever. Like, can we find a middle road? And that was not something that was considered. There was a presentation that was given in the last study session where we talked specifically about some of the community schools that are occurring. We have a significant need in Westlake and Cedar Valley. We've had a huge uptick in multi-language learners, as well as our kiddos who qualify for McKinney-Vento, which is the federal program in which kids are designated as being homeless. We have, I think currently, I want to say it's 217 students in our area that qualify under McKinney-Vento, which is less than some of the other bigger areas like Orem. So we don't have the same level of supports. We also have some specific challenges with our area when it comes to things like food pantries, public transportation, medical services that are just not out here in this area yet. That kind of really exacerbates the issue. Those are just a couple of examples. I could go into it. I could probably talk for like 3 hours about that piece alone.